The Environment Secretary Owen Paterson will visit flood-affected communities in Hull and Boston, in Lincolnshire later, Defra has announced. The visit comes as communities on the east coast of England are assessing the damage caused by the worst tidal surge for 60 years. The Environment Agency said 1,400 properties were flooded and thousands of people had to leave their homes. But it held improved defenses and lifted its final severe flood warning. The severe warning was lifted on Friday night amid improving weather. More than 10 flood alerts, warning people that flooding is possible, remain in place, mainly in the Anglia area. Insurers are bracing themselves for new claims over damage to homes and businesses, 2 months after storms in southern England led to payouts of £130 million. Malcolm Tarling, of the Association of British Insurers, (ABI), urged those affected to contact insurers straight away. He said a number of insurance companies were already in some of the worst hit areas and would be checking their records and calling customers as their priority was to get claims moving as quickly as possible. The largest North Sea surge since the devastating floods of 1953 hit the North Norfolk coast early on Thursday evening and headed south through the night. 7 clifftop homes collapsed in Hemsby, Norfolk, where a lifeboat station was washed into the sea, and there was flooding in Boston, Lincolnshire, and Whitby in North Yorkshire. Homes along the Humber estuary in northern Lincolnshire and East Yorkshire were also affected. The Atlantic storm, which brought coastal flooding and gale force winds of up to 100 miles per hour, caused widespread disruption across the UK and claimed the lives of 2 men, in West Lothian, Scotland, and in Retford, Nottinghamshire. Scottish Hydro said on Friday that engineers were still working to restore power to 1,500 customers in Scotland. About 1,800 homes were evacuated on Friday evening in the village of Wyberton near Boston, because of fears of flooding following damage to flood defences. However, local authorities said high tide had passed without incident. Meanwhile, a major cleanup operation has been getting underway. Steve Hewitt, the coxswain of Hemsby lifeboat, told the BBC people had been pulling together to help those who had lost everything. "It's a complete mess. We've had several buildings and bits of concrete blocks being broken up and pushed down the coast, and they're now scattered all over the beach. There's roofs off buildings and sides of buildings. All the equipment out of buildings has literally been scattered all the way down the coast." The EA said 800,000 homes in England had been protected by flood defences and better forecasting had given people vital time to prepare. It described the tidal surge as the most serious for more than 60 years but said there was a vastly improving picture as floodwaters receded in many affected areas. The EA said sea levels had earlier peaked at 5.8 metres, 19 feet, in Hull, the highest seen by the East Yorkshire city since 1953, and 4.7 metres, 15 feet, in Dover, Kent, the highest recorded there in more than 100 years. Dr. Paul A. Einster, Environment Agency Chief Executive, said, "Our thoughts remain with those people who have been affected by flooding." The number of flood warnings is now reducing. However, Environment Agency teams remain on the ground to check flood risk management assets including barriers and to monitor sea levels. Advances in weather and flood forecasting mean that early warnings of a tidal surge were given to emergency services, homes and businesses, allowing vital time to prepare. Hugely traumatic. Mary Donaugh, the chair of the Flood Protection Association, which represents flood victims, told the BBC her heart absolutely goes out to everyone who has been flooded. She said her home had been flooded on many occasions and having to stand back and watch your home turn into a building site is a hugely traumatic experience. Insurance companies had improved an awful lot since the floods of 2007 but people were still frightened about insurance premiums. The Abbey's Mr. Tarling told the BBC one event was unlikely to push up insurance premiums across the board but could impact on the renewal premiums of those who had made large claims. Elsewhere, hurricane-force winds and tidal surges killed at least 5 people in northern Europe and caused flooding and travel disruption. Weather forecasters say the low pressure responsible for the stormy conditions has now moved away from the UK. The Met Office says rain across central and western areas will push east overnight but conditions are turning drier for most areas.